The 30s began in the shadow of economic depression. On October 24, 1929, the world stock markets crashed, bringing the roaring 20s to an abrupt end. The deep slump of the 1930s would take time to work its way around the world, but Britain began to experience an alarming growth in unemployment. By the end of 1930, 2 million men were without work. Britain had its second Labour government. In 1929, Labour had become the biggest party in Parliament after an inconclusive election. Ramsay MacDonald hoped to fight the effects of the economic crisis, but he depended on the Liberals for support and knew that any radical socialist policies would be defeated in the Commons. Tension rose between the Liberals and Labour during 1930. Lloyd George, the Liberal leader, demanded electoral reform, but MacDonald refused to give an assurance that he would attempt to change the franchise system. The Liberals kept Labour in power during 1930 because they knew that they would fare badly at the polls. The Liberal Party was in decline and Labour's star seemed to be rising. In the British Dominion of India, Mohandas K. Gandhi was causing trouble for the Raj. 1930 saw him imprisoned for a second time. He organised boycotts of British goods and defied the salt tax law, which forbade anyone to produce salt without paying a levy to the government. Gandhi became a national figure with a huge following in India and many supporters in Britain. But the newsreels reflected little of the economic gloom. Pathé was the world's foremost newsreel company, in operation in Britain since 1897. Pathé brought the cinema-going public a mixture of general news stories, sporting events, and items about new inventions and technological breakthroughs. Unlike modern news-gathering techniques, the cumbersome film methods of the 30s meant that Pathé concentrated on events which were planned in advance. Most people got their daily news from newspapers and looked to the newsreel for entertainment and highlights of such things as royal events, sporting occasions, and other stories of interest. In 1930, Pathé brought to the screen stories as diverse as the raising of the Hindenburg, a World War I German battleship scuttled at Scapa Flow, and the contest for the America's Cup. The Hindenburg and 69 other German vessels had been interned at Scapa Flow in Scotland by the Royal Navy at the end of the First World War. In a final act of defiance, the defeated sailors surprised their captors by sinking all the ships. Pathé News was one of the few means by which people could get a taste of the current sporting action, whether it was the annual Henley Regatta or a new sport such as motor racing. Pathé brought newspaper reports to life for an audience eager to experience the thrills of speed and human agility. In 1930, the America's Cup contest saw the United States retain the trophy yet again. The America's Cup is one of the oldest and best-known trophies in international sailing. It started in 1851, when a contest around the Isle of Wight was won by a boat called the America. The trophy, named after the victor, was taken to the United States and donated to the New York Yacht Club for an international challenge competition. In the 1920s, the competition evolved into a straight fight between a challenger, usually from Britain, and a defending vessel from America. The Cup stayed firmly in the New York Yacht Club from 1870 until 1983, when an Australian challenger finally won it. Motion pictures with sound were still a phenomenon in 1930, but Pathé managed to use the technology to great effect during that year.
Here at the skiing resort of Mürren, high up in the Swiss Alps, competitors are preparing for the start of the long-distance ski racing championship. As the entrants set out over the 14-kilometer course, a light covering of powdery snow makes the going difficult over the course. At the halfway stage, the race had resolved itself into a duel between Spence and Dunn. With Spence's superior technique and long experience turning the scale, he won in a time of 1 hour, 35 minutes. The flag goes down and they're off. These two finalists power forward in the Skating Championship of France. This slow-motion film shows the style and speed of the competitors, with Quaglia racing forward at a tremendous pace. This renowned skater maintains his lead throughout the race to speed across the finishing line victorious. And here's the winner, Quaglia, a happy man indeed. A moment of relaxation before the big event, the start of the Coupe de France at Chamonix. As the bobsleigh teams hurtle around the course in this, the derby of the winter sports, they gain speed at an alarming rate. It really is a breathtaking sight, with the sleighs getting faster and faster at every turn. The thrills and chills are certainly here in this exciting sport as the teams race towards the finish. And here's the winning team, smiling against all the odds. At this site in Dagenham, we look out today upon some 300 acres of more or less undeveloped land, which in the near future will be sending out 250,000 motor vehicles per annum to all parts of Europe and finding regular employment for more than 15,000 men. The works which are now under construction will be the largest motor factory in Europe and will place Great Britain in a class comparable only with America as a major producer of cars. Motorists from all parts of Europe took part in the annual Monte Carlo rally held this week. In glorious spring sunshine, despite a chilly breeze, competitors and spectators alike congregated on the seafront at Monte Carlo, where the cars were assembled. British cars did very well in this year's event, with points being gained in both the hill climbing and speed trials. Mechanics give the cars a final inspection before the next stage of this famous contest. A pirate vessel fires its guns in salute as a giant airship passes overhead. Surrounded by a flotilla of small craft, the ship, bedecked in colorful bunting, sails into port. Thus, the old world meets the new, and it's carnival time again in sun-drenched Florida. The elaborate floats parade in stately procession down the main street, past the pavements lined with spectators. A circus elephant leads the way. It's all part of the fun. Each float has been painstakingly built, and there's a friendly rivalry between the participants. Life here really is one long holiday. In the warmth of a June day, crowds line the walls of Conway Castle, eagerly awaiting the arrival of David Lloyd George, who, whilst taking a well-earned rest from his political duties, is here to attend the coronation of the next Welsh Rose Queen, amidst applause from the spectators. He then made a brief address to the crowd before leaving. The liner Empress of Britain was today launched by His Royal Highness Edward, Prince of Wales. Commissioned by the Canadian Pacific Line, the ship was built at the Clydebank Yard of John Brown and Company at a cost of £3 million. Having inspected some of the liner's interior accommodation, the Prince passed all around the hull before proceeding to the launch platform. The Empress of Britain is the third great Atlantic liner to be built by the John Brown Yard, her two predecessors being the Lusitania and the Aquitania.
Right here? Yes. Britain and may success always attend her and those who sail it.
After an anxious 10 seconds of waiting, the huge hull moved down the slipways and entered the water. new vessel is broader in the beam than the Aquitania and a deck higher, fact which made the launch a very difficult one, involving increasing the breadth of the launching ways beyond anything previously required. It is therefore exceptionally gratifying that the launch has proved to be a complete success from the technical as well as the spectacular point of view. Towed behind a small motor launch, the specially designed barrel containing Mr. William Red Hill is about to be released to begin its awe-inspiring journey over the Niagara Falls, a journey that several men have attempted, but few have survived. Having successfully negotiated the falls themselves and having passed through the infamous whirlpool, we now see Mr. Hill's barrel being swept along by the power of the rushing water of the rapids, an awesome sight indeed. Here we see the recovery boat anxiously awaiting the first sighting of the barrel. And here we see Mr. Hill floating gently through far calmer waters, nearing the end of his record attempt. And there he is. Mr. Hill emerges from the barrel, 5 hours having elapsed since the start of his epic journey, battered, bruised, but smiling and otherwise unharmed.
Here is the Hindenburg when the last salvage attempt was made in 1926. At that time, she still carried the whole of her superstructure, but during the last 4 years, this has been entirely cut away. A very lengthy process working beneath the water. It is exactly 11 years since the pride of the German High Seas Fleet was scuttled in Scapa Flow, and although 29 of the other warships have since been raised to the surface, the Hindenburg is proving stubborn, refusing to leave her watery grave. Each one of these giant pumps pours out water at the rate of over 750 gallons per hour, and it was only after 55 hours continuous pumping that she began to appear once more, the 4th time that she has been raised. The diver is at work placing patches on the side of the vessel, it requiring over 800 of these before she could be pumped dry. This gives some idea of the immense task which is facing the salvage people. Masses of barnacles and seaweed have accumulated on the decks during her last 4 years on the bed of the sea, and tons of mussels have had to be scraped away before the metal of the guns has appeared. At night time, hundreds of seabirds have gathered on the decks to feed. It's an absolute paradise for them. There's a tour of the forward guns, and they're an absolute mess, as you see. But the old ship has won yet another round of her fight, for she suddenly took a list to starboard. Operations had to be abandoned hurriedly, and she sank slowly back into the position she has occupied for the past 11 years on the floor of Scapa Flow.
Thousands gathered at the Longchamp racecourse yesterday for the Grand Prix de Paris. President Doumergue of France watched from the royal box as the horses were led from the enclosure out onto the course. The Grand Prix is open to 3-year-olds and is run over a distance of 28 furlongs. From an original field of 25, 4 horses were withdrawn prior to the race. They're off. The race was on for the richest purse in the racing calendar, with the eventual winner receiving over 1 million francs in prize money. From the outset, the horses were closely bunched together, with the French riders predominating and the English being kept to the back. As the horses sped around the final bend into the home straight, Commanderie surged forward to take the lead. Beating off a challenge from Chateaubuisson, on the inside he raced across the line and won by 1.5 lengths, with Chateaubuisson second and a dead heat for third place between Godiche and Villefranche. Miss Winifred Brown taxis to a halt here at Hanworth today to become the winner of the King's Cup Air Race, the first woman to win this event and a personal triumph for the pilot. For Miss Brown has only been flying since 1926, and her longest flight hitherto had been in one day from London to Amsterdam. Piloting an Avro Avian aeroplane fitted with a Cirrus 3 engine, she covered the 750-mile course around England at an average speed of 102.7 miles an hour.
Brown, as chairman of the Royal Aero Club, I have the greatest pleasure in presenting to you this cup, which is known as the Blue Ribbon of the Turf, of the air, is it? Cut my remarks short after that. I'm sure there is no one who is here present today watching the splendid finish who did not welcome your very great and signal victory.
Well, thank you all ever so much for being so kind to me. I'm ever so pleased. I never expected. Well, I didn't even expect to get back here. I left my suitcases with a label on addressed home. I'm simply delighted, of course, and thank you very, very much indeed.
There was a brilliant opening to the Henry Royal Regatta today, with the sun shining brightly and perfect summer weather. Despite the counter-attractions of Wimbledon, there was a very large crowd of spectators, the enclosures being crowded, while the booms were lined with craft, almost down to falling. Here we see the college pair, Graham and Johnson, are leading the Leander pair, Hopcroft and Letchworth. They won by about 2 lengths. There was a cool breeze which blew downstream and which consequently was a handicap to the crews. The wonderful sunshine was ideal for picnics in the punts lining the booms, with hundreds of people taking advantage of it, and the hampers were out in force. Even the souvenir salesmen were plying their wares by boat. The races have opened in brilliant style, and it's really looking a little more like the Henley of pre-war days. Now we see the Quentin Boat Club leading the Kingston Rowing Club in a heat of the Thames Challenge Cup. A wonderful start to the regatta, and we look forward to many more enjoyable days. The weaker sex, though they belie that title at times, are going in for all sorts of sport and doing jolly well at it these days. In fact, just lately, they have competed with men on even terms and beaten them. Only last week, we showed you a woman, Miss Winifred Brown, winning the Blue Ribbon of the Air against scores of famous airmen. But What would the famous Dr. Grace have said had he seen the feminine Bradmans of today? Little did he think then of what the future had to hold, with women playing cricket at a very competitive level.
That was the starting gun for the big class yachts, amongst whom is Britannia, with His Majesty the King racing on board her. Lord Camrose's cutter, Cambria, was first over the line. She's very closely followed by Britannia, with Lulworth third. Mr. Davis's schooner, the Westward, and Whiteheather the second. There's Britannia beating away to the westward. Just behind her is the cutter Candida. Mr. Andrews' cutter Candida, in tacking over round the point, has badly ripped her main sheet. She's luffing up into the wind now, with no more hopes of racing for today. Britannia has gone into the lead once more, very closely followed by schooner Westward. Only a short while now before the great race starts, with intense activity in the pits. We've just heard, to the disappointment of everyone, that Per Caracciolo, the German ace, is definitely a non-starter. Italy has swept the board with Alfa Romeos taking the first three places. There's Signor Nuvolari, the winner, at an average speed of 70.86 miles per hour, only 16 seconds ahead of his teammate, Campari, with Signor Vasi third. The Britisher, Cyril Paul, is fourth. Nuvolari doesn't seem a bit exhausted after his magnificent drive. The German battlecruiser Hindenburg has at last been salved from the waters of Scapa Flow, and with her 250-mile journey to Rosyth accomplished without a hitch, a marvel of salvage work has been completed. Thousands of people flocked to the banks of the river as she passed beneath the great Forth Bridge, escorted by 3 German tugs on her last voyage. This was not her first entry to the Forth, for over 11 years ago, with her mighty sister ships, she sailed in the historic procession of surrender. The Hindenburg is the largest vessel which has ever been salvaged, but she resisted all efforts for over 11 years. She first appeared on the surface 4 years ago, but the water which she contained gave her a list of 45 degrees, so she had to be sunk once more. 30 of the sunk fleet, representing 125,000 total tonnage, have now been raised, but 18 still remain at the bottom of Scapa Flow. Once the pride of the battle cruiser squadron, the most redoubtable vessel the German Imperial Navy possessed, she is now but a ghost of her former self. Her decks are battered and barnacled, her gun turrets are rusted and encrusted from the years beneath the sea. 1,000 patches have made her airtight, but she sailed on an even keel into Rosyth, shortly to become scrap iron. Her journey's end.
What a mast! Towering 165 feet in the air, this main stick of the Shamrock is hollow and built like a bamboo fishing rod. Soiled as a second day's shirt by her short stay in our harbors, she is going into dry dock for a bath and overhauling before the big race. She is the hope of Sir Thomas Lipton in that gallant sportsman's 5th attempt in a score of years to lift the America's Cup. This picture gives Americans their first view of the graceful lines of Shamrock's underbody. From bow to stern, she measures 81 feet and displaces 135 tons. Every line spells speed. The oil stains on her waterline give a startling expose of the condition of our harbor waters. When she gets her new dress, emerald green, white boot topping and bronze bottom, the Shamrock will be kept out in clean open sea. A bit more scrubbing and a little work below, and the racer will be ready for her sails and the trials to follow. Sir Thomas' racing advisor, Colonel Neal, and Skipper Hurd, a real hairy-chested he-sailor man, are supervising the finishing touches.
I say the Electric Boat Company have docked the boat very successfully today, Captain.
Yes,
I'm sure Sir Thomas Lipton will be highly delighted when he knows what they've done for us. I hope the painter fellows will put plenty of elbow grease into their work, because they won't do any harm to the wood.
Colonel, what do you and the captain think about the chances of the Shamrock?
Well, being a Scotsman, I'm pretty cautious. And if you wait till after the first race, I'll be able to tell you a lot better. But I think we've got a very good boat, and I think we'll have a good chance.
Under a full spread of canvas, the America's Cup Challenger Shamrock is testing her racing rig. Her 135 tons are moving through the water at a speed that indicates she is just about right for the big race. Perhaps it's because she knows her owner, Sir Thomas, is keeping his weather eye on her. There she blows, covering the course in remarkable time. And here is Vanderbilt's Enterprise.
Here in Yorkshire, motorcyclists compete in the cycling world's Grand National, the Scott Trials. Over a specifically designated course chosen to push both riders and machines to their limits, the competitors race in dreadful weather conditions. This flooded road has proved to be a stumbling block to more than one of the cyclists. Here we see just one such competitor trying to restart his very wet motorcycle. As the other riders wade through the water, he manages to get the engine going again and drives on to the next obstacle, while another cyclist stalls in mid-flood. Travelling over muddy, open moorland, the tired riders are given a helpful push by the stewards of the course. Spectators line the banks as the cyclists ride through the middle of the stream, strewn with rocks, and cheerfully monitor the riders' progress as they near the end of the race. With nearly 80 entrants overall for the racing derby here at Brooklands, those who achieve the fastest times in the practice runs are the first to be assembled on the line for the start of the race. Everything from baby sevens to giant races is competing in this event, to be run over a distance of 500 miles, with drivers changing over at the halfway stage. The second batch of cars is started from the line. The appalling conditions with rain falling steadily makes the course quite treacherous as the faster vehicles lap their fellow competitors. Although the more powerful giants seem to be dominating the race, the smaller cars manage to keep up the pace as they race for mile upon thrilling mile. And it is a baby Austin which crosses the finish line first. Driven by S.C. Davis and his co-driver, the Earl of March, they averaged a speed of 83.41 miles an hour over the course, a marvelous feat of endurance driving. In historic procession, the King, accompanied by Queen Mary, drives in state to the Palace of Westminster to open the session of Parliament. Driving in the old state coach, drawn by 8 bay horses, the King and Queen pass through the streets lined with cheering crowds, escorted by the sovereign's escort of the Royal Horse Guards, the route of the procession being lined by the Brigade of Guards. The Queen is beautifully attired in a dress of cloth of gold, embroidered in diamonds and seed pearls, and forming a train as most seemingly befits such an auspicious occasion. The Guard of Honour of the 3rd Battalion, the Grenadier Guards, with the King's colour, is mounted at the Houses of Parliament. As their Majesties arrive at the Palace of Westminster, a salute of 41 guns is fired in St. James's Park by a battery of the Royal Horse Artillery.
The 20th century has seen rapid technological growth. Since Pathé's inception in 1898, man had discovered how to fly, and by 1930, the newsreels reflected people's fascination with technology, especially aeroplanes. Story after story in 1930 concerned the development of both civil and military flying machines, from seaplanes to airships, from aeroplane pageants to the development of an airliner. Pathé caught the airborne spirit of the modern age. And of course, there was more down-to-earth technology, such as an electric tote system for race courses, and a strange combination of Zeppelin and train.
The mechanized portable totalizator, as approved by the Betting Board of Control, will be in operation during the following racing season. The trials of this machine at Folkestone and at Thirsk racecourses have been very encouraging. At last, it appears that the Betting Control Board have found a machine which will deal adequately and satisfactorily with any betting that may ever take place on any course in this country. Here's a novel way of conducting speed trials. Each day in his speedboat, Dart Craft, Mr. J.W. Sullivan tests his skill against unlikely opponents, the express trains of the London North Eastern Railway. Over a 2-mile stretch of the River Ouse, this renowned motorboat racer opens up the throttle and speeds across the water, pitting his wits against such formidable competition as the Flying Scotsman, the pride of the LNER. This particular stretch of the Ouse runs parallel to the main London North Eastern Railway track, so there's no shortage of competitors as Mr. Sullivan races back and forth, testing out his new craft. In a huge display of British aircraft, the RAF took to the skies today at Hendon. Wave upon wave of aeroplanes threw over the enormous crowds of spectators in the greatest air pageant ever staged in the history of aviation. Britain's giant airship, the R101, flew over the aerodrome on her return journey to Cardington, where she's moored. She is the largest airship in the world and will fly to Egypt and India in the autumn. The officers from the Central Flying School gave an amazing display of flying when they looped the loop in formation directly over the airfield. There was also an exhibition of aerobatics, with the planes leaving a trail of smoke behind them whilst performing some daring evolutions and stunning aeronautical feats. In a further aerobatic display, 3 groups of planes looped the loop overhead, seemingly tied together for the maneuver. They then flew past in a single line to the cheers of the watching crowd.
Now, I want you to remember that if at any time you have to use your parachute, be sure you get clear of the machine before you pull your ripcord. This, you know, is your ripcord. Secondly, don't forget that if you have to land in a strong wind, it's better to land facing downwind than upwind, because if you face upwind, you will go over on your head. Have you got that?
will turn to the right. You put right rudder on and right bank. You'll
Yes,
find
sir.
now that the machine starts to turn that the nose will drop slightly. So you need to ease the stick slightly back. Also, you'll find that the machine tries to overbank. That's due to the outer wing going faster than the inner wing and getting more lift. Well, now you're in your turn. Now to stay in your turn, you stay in by the use of all controls. If you find your nose getting a little bit high on the horizon, you put your stick slightly forward and a little right or bottom rudder. That is if you're doing a right-hand turn. To go on with our turns now, we're still in the turn. If you get a draft coming on your outside, you know that you're slipping out. And what you want to do is to take off a little rudder, put on a little more bank to slow up the rate of turn. If on the other hand you find a draft coming up from the inside, you know that you're slipping in. It is an entirely of new construction. It's a method that has never been used before, to my knowledge, in the world. And although it isn't as vast as I would like it to be, nothing ever is, of course, it has proved to be very successful. And I hope that when I get over the other side, we may be able to do something with the American defenders. I designed a boat especially for myself, and the fuselage part of it is, to use an old hackneyed expression, made to measure. But actually it does. Just fit me and no more. The great idea is to do away with the heavy sides of the boat and take the strains of the structure through a central girder, which you see here, and it is built up of wood longerons and struts in exactly the same manner as an aeroplane fuselage.
Scott Payne is just going to give you an idea of what Miss Britain 1 can do in the way of speed. Notice the way Miss Britain turns without decelerating at all. As I've already told you, I know I've got a tough job on, and I shall be very surprised if I have any luck. But I'll promise you I'll do the best I can to protect
you. The flying boats seen here are preparing for their tour of the Baltic. Leaving from Felixstowe en route for Esbjerg, they will be covering a distance of some 3,330 statute miles during their program. Their route has been approved by all of the foreign countries concerned, and we wish them bon voyage and a safe journey back to England on their return in October. The short Valletta monoplane is the biggest seaplane in the world. The term seaplane is used to indicate marine aircraft with twin floats or pontoons and to distinguish it from what is known as the flying boats. The total flying weight of the Valletta is approximately 22,000 pounds, so that it compares in size and weight with the largest flying boats except the experimental German flying boat known as the DOX. The Valletta has a span of 107 feet, and it depends entirely on the spacing of the huge floats on either side of the center line of the fuselage to preserve a level keel on the water. Passengers will gain in both a sense of roominess and in the opportunities of unrestricted views of the outside world. With the arrival of a new aircraft at Heston Aerodrome today, the question is being asked, are Ford planning to build their new plane over here? Construction of the new Ford Motors plant on the site at Dagenham is well underway, and it may be the case that the American manufacturer has similar plans for the aircraft industry. The mechanics are seen here starting up the engines of the new plane in preparation for its demonstration flight over the aerodrome. The aircraft is fitted with 3 engines, 1 in the nose and 1 under each wing to port and starboard. She is completely made of metal and is capable of carrying 16 passengers when in operation. Her overall construction and the use of 3 engines are key factors in the hopes for the plane's maneuverability and airworthiness.
Shaped like a Zeppelin and driven by a propeller, this new type of railway coach, in tests near Hanover, traveled at 150 kilometers, that is about 94 miles per hour. The invention of a German engineer, Herr Krukenberg, this combination of an omnibus running on rails and an airship has accommodation for 40 passengers. It has 2 compartments, one for smokers, a luggage room and a vestibule. Driven by a 500 horsepower engine, it consumes oil fuel at a very low cost. The coach is streamlined throughout its length, and one of the most remarkable features of this trial was that it was traveling at over 90 miles per hour within 60 seconds of starting.
Pilot area number 1.
The christening ceremony over, the airship is dragged from her hangar for an inaugural flight with a difference. For this is the first time that an owner-piloted blimp will take to the air.
I don't get too cold now.
The airship flies gracefully away from her moorings. We are left with the question, could this really be the family car of the future? The Prince of Wales is seen here arriving by motor launch at the giant German flying boat, the Dornier DOX, which is now at Calshot on Southampton Water. Here we see the plane taxiing slowly down the Solent in brilliant sunshine and taking off for the Prince's half-hour flight around the Isle of Wight. His Royal Highness added to his list of flying experiences when he took over one of the dual controls. Afterwards, he told me that he found the DOX just as easy to control as his own aeroplane, and that he had been greatly impressed by the comfort and size of the machine. After an engine overhaul and weather permitting, the DOX will leave Calshot for Bordeaux on the next stage of her flight to America. This is the first of a fleet of giant British airliners for use on the Imperial Airways air route, and is the largest passenger machine in the world. It represents the British reply to the German challenge for supremacy in commercial aircraft construction. Its weight when fully loaded will approach 13 tons. It has a cruising speed of 105 miles an hour. Owing to the placing of the motors away from the fuselage, the noise in the passenger saloons when the machine is flying at full speed will not be greater than that heard in an express train.
1930 was a year in which the world teetered on the edge of one of the worst economic slumps in history. But the newsreels kept spirits high, with stories about a whole range of human endeavor and innovation. 1930, a year to remember.